But I'm also here for Grapevine, so just
We're
like
live anyways.
keep watching.
Oh,
Oh,
we
are
live.
we?
Okay, morning. Thanks for
On
letting
YouTube.
us know.
Who cares?
That means I should stop shouting. Why are you even awake? How come you are awake at this time? What have you have been roaming streets at night? Bad gang. Sorry, we're going live.
Okay.
Bills, rent.
Kida, hey, how's APJ? Thank you for saying hi. I need to come back to Abuja actually.
Preach.
Are you paying for my tickets? Hey, can I see for president? Yeah, my guy. Okay, cool. So is that like a
Me,
guaranteed
it's a,
ticket?
it's a corona thing. I literally came in on Saturday, and that's what everyone was doing to me.
Really? Oh yeah, you have to do leg shake now.
Oh, let's all.
Sorry, not later.
Right. Mike's up. Studio is live. Good morning, Lagos, and thank you very much for staying tuned here on Smooth 98.1. It's time for Freshly Pressed 981, where we take you through detailed analysis of today's national news stories. And to do this with us this morning, it's wonderful to have with us in the studio Folu Storms. Morning, Folu.
Hey, good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Ayo. How is everyone doing?
Very well, thank you. A sight for sore eyes on this lovely Tuesday morning.
Stop it, but you can say it again.
We also have Justin Ijeh. Good morning, Justin.
Lagos, now good morning.
Justin, you're also excited for so
Morning, Justin. All right, we also have Ikemesit.
Hey. Morning,
And
Lagos.
JudgeIyke
Morning,
on
Ayo.
Twitter. Morning, good to have you.
Sure.
Now, if you'd like to join the conversation this morning, we'd love for you to do so through WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. On Twitter, it's at Smooth981FM. Kindly use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. On YouTube, we're streaming live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Smooth981FM Lagos. All right, let's jump straight in to our first story here. Unfortunate news here from Kaduna State. And we have a statement from the governor, El Rufai, Nasser El Rufai, saying Kaduna will not negotiate with bandits. This story is from the Daily Times. Now, the governor made the remarks when he visited Karewa and 4 other villages in Igabi and Giwa local government where 51 villagers were massacred by bandits in an early morning attack on Sunday. Please take us through the story, Justin.
Yeah, I wish I could say that this was shocking, but it's become the norm. Killings, slaughterings, and we get the typical platitudes from people in office whose job it is. The governor is saying the usual things. Condolences to the family, promises to wipe out, promises to. He actually used those terms. We will wipe them out. We will pursue them. We will get them. Well, we've been hearing this for years, and it keeps happening. Unfortunately, we keep losing lives. What's the price or what's the value of a Nigerian life? One might ask.
Yes.
But that is what it is. He says we will send them to their maker. And the security agencies are taking the war to the forest and we are eliminating them. This is not even law enforcement. This is just a tirade, right? I can understand he feels bad. If you feel bad enough about it, you have a huge security vote. I'm yet to see one person resign over their inability to discharge their cardinal duty to the people, which is protection of lives and property. We get all of this. To the substance of it, I think
Yes.
the big problem we have in Nigeria is ungoverned spaces.
Okay.
That is why the banditry can thrive. That is why you can have people strolling seemingly out of the blues, commit mayhem, arson, murder, and walk right back into the ether from whence they emerged. Ungoverned spaces are an issue. To my mind, there's no correlation between the amount of money we purportedly spend on security and the fact that we still are unable to police these ungoverned spaces. So the governor had said in his statement, security agencies are doing the best they can, but they find it difficult to get to remote areas in good time due to poor access roads, while the natives find it difficult to get to security personnel due to poor GSM networks. 2 problems here. Number one, the paucity of access roads and that kind of infrastructure is not news. Equip the police equip the security forces to suit the situational context in which they operate. It's not that complex. And then expecting the people to be the ones, or the dependency of people on GSM phones to reach the security networks, means that then the security networks and agencies are also reactive.
Thank you very much. This is something we talk about a lot, particularly here with regards to preventive measures as opposed to reacting. This is not the first time Kaduna has come under attack. We have had in the past a number of attacks, banditries, and people have gone into villages. Unfortunately, this seems to not be stopping, and we want a more grounded solution, as it were, to these issues. We also have the story on coronavirus, an update on coronavirus from the Daily Times, and it's quite reassuring, hopefully. Folu, I'd like to hear what you think about this. No new COVID-19 case in Nigeria, says federal government.
Okay. So the Minister of Health, Dr. Ijeh, was speaking and says that other than the one confirmed case of the Italian that's presently being managed in Lagos, there is no other confirmed COVID-19 or coronavirus case. That there are about 19 people in Lagos and 39 in Ogun State that were identified through contact tracing with this individual. They're currently on self-quarantine under close supervision, so they're being quarantined in their homes. Now, I know that coronavirus, people are sort of watching it, and it is causing quite a bit of concern, borderline panic, and we have to again remind people to not panic. There are a few things to note about it. That coronavirus, the mortality rate, so the death rate for this thing is incredibly low. It's at 2%. In fact, it's people who are sort of over age 81 or those with underlying and severe health issues already, pre-existing conditions that are really at risk. The reason the entire world is a bit concerned is simply because of the way this virus mutated. So for us here in Nigeria, we've got to really just make sure that, one, we're alert, we're paying attention to what's going on. We are reporting people. If you're not feeling well, I suggest that you personally quarantine yourself. Try and stay away and minimize contact with a number of people. But also just remember that really the best way to stay protected from this is to practice hygiene, just basic hygiene.
Wash them
your
hands.
Also,
Soap and
can
water,
people
20
stop buying up
seconds.
so many face masks? Because what you're doing is you're putting healthcare professionals, who are the ones that are going to have to deal with sick people, at risk. That's a very big issue, and this is what panic buying causes. People have bought up all the face masks, they're drowning themselves in hand sanitizer. The cost for all these things is going up. It's not going to save you, it's not going to help you. Just stay clean, stay protected as much as you can. And remember that at the end of the day, even if for some reason or some bizarre reason you come in contact with this, it is not a death sentence. It is just unusual. So I think that's all we really need to pay attention to now. I know Nigerians are very aware, so I expect that whistleblowing will be at an all-time high for anyone that's sneezing or coughing right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for highlighting that and some of the main issues and questions that people have about coronavirus. A lot of information is going out there, some very false, some myths, some have no element of truth. Please, like we mentioned again and again, fact check. Don't be too quick to spread false news, false stories about coronavirus.
I will say that for state governments as well, Lagos State, if they could put out more sort of visuals for the quote-unquote state-of-the-art detention centers, or they shouldn't be detention centers, right?
Quarantine facilities.
Like detention, but quarantine facilities, and that would be great, because there are also a lot of rumors going out. Somebody's like, oh, they're just being kept in a random tent. And that's a bit of a concern, especially if you don't know that some of the people you're tracing may have these underlying health issues. But I think of aggressive early tactics to contain this, and the countries who are now over 30 plus keep saying the same thing. You've got to be aggressive to really contain this thing. So let's see if we can step up to the task.
Thank you very much. We have comments here from WhatsApp. Samuel from Lekki says Governor El Rufai should have said Kaduna shouldn't have negotiated with bandits. He encouraged them when he claimed he paid them to stop the killing. For those in southern Kaduna, he's just playing politics, and that's very unfair. Good morning. Thank you. We also have from Ayo saying on government spaces, that what's the role of local government chairman? These countries seems too overwhelming for our leaders. Are we really that big? How do you eat an elephant by people? Let's get our local government area chairman really working. Let's fund them. They are closest to the people, so this security and other tasks will not continue to overwhelm our leaders. And then moving on to Twitter, Dapolua says, Justin, what are you on about resigning? As our Manchester said yesterday, resignation is a British tradition. All right, let's move on to the next story. Justin, I'll come back to you for this. Now, it seems a strange headline, but when you read the details, you see just how important it is. It is from the Punch newspaper. Court bars fathers compulsory blood donation in Lagos hospitals. Please tell us what's happening in Lagos public hospitals. So apparently, in the past, for you to register for antenatal, you were mandated, your husband was mandated to donate blood, and that was a prerequisite for you to register. However, a court has ruled that out, and please take us to this judgment.
Another example of things that make you go, who knew? That if you wanted to, if your wife was up for antenatal and you wanted to use public care facilities, that you were coerced into donating blood. The things that the world does to men. Ikemesit, you know?
What? Why are you roping me?
Okay.
I'm confused.
Just to diffuse.
So
that was the original elicit a reaction.
I'm the only guy here and I'm horrified.
So, but seriously,
Okay.
it's shameful that ourselves in a situation where you are coercing a human being to donate blood for whatever reason. Okay, this is public care facilities. Ostensibly, these are taxpayers who are seeking to access these facilities, right? And you are coercing people, and this has been going on for years. Anyway, kudos to SAP, the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, which took the case up and filed the suit, claiming that that coercion is contrary to Section 33 of the 1999 Constitution, which guarantees Nigerians the right to life. Therefore, placing a blood donation before accessing treatment was a violation of that. So, on that basis, they've gotten a court to vacate or prohibit that practice, and kudos to them for that, because I don't know, it's really shameful that we do things like this in the 21st century.
But can I just comment and talking about shameful, because the reality, you know, there's the ideal of what should exist in our healthcare institutions as the reality of what exists, and the reality is that it's very hard to find blood. Blood that is uncontaminated, because generally we don't have a culture or a habit of going to donate blood. So while I agree you should not access to healthcare on that basis, I do understand, or I can understand the reasons for that. Because if you've ever had a relative or anyone you've had to take to the hospital and they need blood, they just look at you like, well,
I
you
would
have to
argue,
figure out how to get that.
I agree on the importance of information, and I would argue that the best approach would be advocacy. Right, increase the tempo of advocacy programs, right, for people to voluntarily come forward and donate blood.
Yes, talking about it, how many times have you seen any form of awareness with regards to the importance of giving blood?
It's only from individuals. I've never
Thank you
seen
very
it
much from private.
So there's no organized approach to it, even from the healthcare practitioners. Yeah, and then again, I don't know, is it these Lagosians that are trekking
so
that you're supposed to donate?
Good. I don't know, initiative. The thought behind it is good. So we need more blood. However, the approach is totally wrong.
The approach is totally wrong. Exactly. You can't coerce me to donate blood. That's my life.
Has anyone here donated blood? Just very quickly for a moment.
Only once in my life. Way back in school.
Ikemesit, you're silent.
It's okay. Focus.
No,
it's
it's fine. I mean, you can never go wrong with public education in the end. I think it's the moral of the
I
story.
noticed how you dodged the question. But
Thank you very much.
It's what we do.
I think we should
It's
get
what
enough,
we do.
information about this, and as much as possible, we can donate blood. Ikemesit, I'll come to you for the next one. It's in the Guardian newspaper. Stakeholders demand terms for $47 billion Chinese loan project execution, from the Guardian newspaper. Please take us to the story.
Okay, so basically, the Guardian is quoting some unnamed sources as saying that the National Assembly has very little details of about $47 billion in loans that the executive has picked up from the Chinese, spread across 22 major infrastructural projects. And basically, the argument is that this is emblematic of a pattern that China is taking with respect to the credit that it has extended towards various African countries. So this is in no way unique to Nigeria, but it's concerning because allegedly the report says, and I think this is something that people should read, some of the deals they're executed in Chinese, so it's not clear that the Nigerian side understand the various terms and conditions that are enshrined in the deals.
The version of the document that was written in
apparently
Mandarin.
That's what the report says. It also says that these firms did not go through the constitutional, the legally required public procurement processes, and so it's not even clear which firms are going to execute these projects. And in cases where the firms are clearly stated as being the executors of this project, one of the projects, of course, is the well-touted Mambila hydroelectric power projects. The firms are made the sole executors of these projects. They have monopoly on where they draw capital from, which projects. So there's also the contention that these guys just import labor from China to do this. So a lot of this is unfounded. I shouldn't say unfounded. A lot of this at the moment is just based off of anonymous reporting, and so the Chinese weren't able to give a statement because apparently one of the project managers, which one of the Chinese construction companies was, referred the Guardian's journalist to, said he was not in any way able to speak to the press. The government also wasn't able to offer a comment at the time of this report. So these well-founded questions about the ability of the government to protect the national interest, even as it's trying to address very pressing national problems. I think it's a story that people should look at, and I'm sure it's something that civil society will also look at. But if any of this is true, it's very, very concerning.
Yes, thank you. Go on, Justin.
And I think we had referenced this sometime last year when we talked about Sino-African relations, right? I remember saying we need to be careful. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is a very well documented strategy by the Chinese at global expansion. A lot of what this article is talking about on the back end of it, you will find that these contracts you're even talking about are funded by Chinese loans, Chinese aid programs, and all of that. So there's a limited extent to which when you sign up, it's the whole package. The question is, does Nigeria have a China policy?
Yeah, and also I should also say this
because the agenda is.
I also say this from the legal side. So Folu, you probably remember this from conflict of laws classes. Sometimes there are provisions in agreements that say that those agreements will be subject to the jurisdiction of a particular country's law. It will be very hard for me to believe that any of these provisions will be subject to Nigerian law. And so it's not clear if the experts who have also looked at this and also looked at Chinese labor laws and Chinese employment laws with respect to these agreements.
But part of what happens is just this desperation for full funding. And that's how they
funding by all means.
Yeah, absolutely, funding by all means. Because you see some of these clauses, you understand that that may not be in the country's best interest or in my best interest.
Kenya lost,
but you're looking for money.
Absolutely.
Kenya has a port that has been
Sri
taken
Lanka also
over
does too.
by the Chinese.
Yeah, because of the inability
owned by China now.
So we have precedents that we can learn from. However, we have criticized again and again the government's attempt to legal documents or agreements, and we've seen that come to bite us years afterwards.
PNID. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks. And gratitude to the Guardian for raising this. I think in some of the articles today, they've investigated and brought information to the public. Thank you. I'll move on very quickly to the next one, and it's from the Vanguard newspaper, and it's something we spoke about, I think, a few weeks back, Folu, talking about the interest of young people in science and technology. Now, the federal government, through the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ayo Mairo Ese, has come out to say that they're going to increase, they're going to try and get children or students in Nigeria more interested in science. We know we have things like STEM that's done abroad. We have organizations committed to going into schools to pick the interest of children in science and technology. Please take us through the story.
Well, essentially, it's just the Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Mairo Ese, saying that, or talking at the Young Scientist Final Examination for what they call a YONSPA, which is Young Nigerian Scientist Presidential Award. The whole point is to catch them young. And they're saying that they intend to dispel the fear among students that have the notion that science is a difficult course to study. Now, something that annoys me personally, I think, when I read stories like this, it's very much eye service. We do a lot of awards, a lot of, we'll have a committee, say XYZ, but the reality is the practices in school, and I'm not sure whether it still happens, but when you tell students from a young age, you have to pick whether you're a science student or an art student, that's where the problems come in, because you may have scientists with artistic flair. Einstein himself had incredible artistic flair. That's why he was able to propose and put forward the theories and things that he did. And I think already in the way that our teaching is carried out in this country, it doesn't encourage people to follow natural passions or natural inclinations, because we're very much focused on putting these children in a box. So what I would say is, if if the government is very serious about this, then there needs to be more attention to perhaps outside of extracurricular clubs, things like that. I mean,
I find it
We
hard
used to
to
have
take.
Jet Club when we were in secondary school.
yeah, so I guess
It's a big thing.
the
I
private
know.
schools are probably leading in
Yeah.
this, but it would be nice to see not just an award, not just something where important men come to speak, where the kids are not really heard, where it's just a lot of ribbon cutting and picture taking, and the people who we should be focusing on, the children, are not really there. They're barely seen
It's
and they're
just
not
sound
encouraged to
bites.
speak. But it is just a
No,
sound
nobody's really paying attention to it.
So what should be done?
And-
So I mentioned very quickly because of time. We mentioned in other parts of the world they're actually taking this very serious because there is a general decline in today's world. Children are more interested in following their passion in the arts in many cases, and it's attractive because you win a competition, you win
Truth
35
be told,
million naira, and so it's easier for you to pursue that. How do you encourage
STEM,
children?
if anything, the government is getting in the way.
All right.
They don't know what to do. They don't understand it. They
don't
they
have
best serve the
comprehensive
people by
policies.
just staying out of it. The private sector is doing a good job, right?
But then what about
growing.
public school students?
Exactly.
though?
I don't think they can't afford to stay out of it. They've got to do something, and it's
Yes.
good at least that they're talking.
Listen,
in that
this is the
general
man that announced
direction.
$100,000 reward for whoever finds a cure for coronavirus.
All right.
STEM encouragement.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Maybe the
I see you
children
being
are
positive.
from-
Right?
yeah.
Let me
Part of
align.
Because don't
This
sit
is-
around chatter again in the morning. He's ready.
But this is a serious thing, and they need to look into it. We need young people, if not, who's going to be our next inventors in the next few years?
I
Yes,
know
but
they
it's
still
the
set
policies, the policies are not good.
a 10% pass mark for people who write federal exams in the country. That's the reality of public sector education. So
All right, we have some comments from particularly with regards to the blood donation. This is from Lanway, who says, please look up SCAF Nigeria and Haima in Health Initiative. These are two organizations doing excellent independent work on blood donation and generating awareness. And this is from a concerned citizen married to a sickle cell warrior. Thank you very much for your comment. You're going to say something? Okay. All right. And then we have from Lola saying, people don't donate blood in Lagos, Nigeria. When last did you all donate blood? We've answered that question. To reduce the incidence of deaths due to blood loss,
No,
pregnant
you
women
won't.
are required to bring a donor. It's an imperfect nation, and that's what works for now. When pregnant women started dying during C-section, or when they start dying, let's see what happens. It's a misplaced action. They need to step up blood donation drives, government involvement, better practices, etc., not to stop what works in a bad situation. So again, going back to what you said, Folu, it may not be perfect, but for a Nigerian context, it might just
it's
be
not a
what's good enough.
donation. It's blood
And then
extortion.
Mama Do on
Well,
Twitter
it's for your
says,
child. It's okay. It's
Mama
not
Do
extort.
says, I practiced blood. Mama Do says, I practiced in the north, and coming to Lagos to get this information was really confusing, especially when it's for women needing ANC. Not 1 unit, 2 units. It's outrageous and contravenes everything about the right to access care.
Yes, because it is also assuming that the women have a significant other to bring in to
Yeah.
donate that blood.
That's
So
another thing.
it's challenging if you're already dealing with so much by yourself
Mhm.
to then be denied that.
And what if the
healthcare.
man's blood is one kind?
Which is probably why he doesn't want
Want
to
to
give.
exactly?
Because if they test it,
Yes.
some things are going to come out.
Yeah.
So what happens to the
Alright,
woman who
let's
needs
move
care?
on very quickly to the next
Whose
story. We have
blood
a
is
few
one
stories to start with.
I-
please. Justin, I'll come to you. Why we haven't arrested suspects who laundered 35 billion naira arms funds by the EFCC? This is another investigative piece by the Guardian newspaper, and again, it's from an anonymous source. But they give us a few details as to why they feel the government or the EFCC has not arrested some of the suspects. We have some big names here. Please take us through this, Justin.
Not a few details, a lot of details actually. Even though the more you read, the more you realize that this is just a long-winded
Yes, I
treatise on the same old. Okay, so as usual, the caption drags you in, and then when you get in, you start wondering, what was that caption about? Why we haven't arrested suspects who laundered 35 billion arms fund? And I read into the story, and they've mentioned big names. So a contract was awarded to a company called Richfield Technologies Limited. Part of people of interest in this story is the former chief of staff to the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, Mr. Mike Ayegbeni Oyadome, and the former Minister of Defense, Alhaji Musa Kwankwaso, among other top government officials. So Richfield Technology is owned by a gentleman called Donald Peterson. The story tells it, Mr. Peterson is a friend to the son of Mr. Michael Yadome, and found himself in possession of several contracts. The header says 35 billion, but I'm looking at the 6 contracts that have been mentioned in the story, and they don't amount, the total contract sums in question here do not amount up to 4 billion. And all of the long-winded details in the story are simply, so the Guardian got possession of the what they call it, not the case file now, the petition itself, where the EFCC was making its case. And so they've basically outlined everything that is in the case. And it's simply a case so far of this man got a contract. He said he has executed the contracts. For some of them, he had been fully paid. For some of them, he had been advanced money. For some of them, he got into problems during execution with the agencies that awarded the contracts, and they couldn't complete it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for the 35 billion. I'm like, okay, so you spent how many pages telling me about one company and one individual who accounts for just about 10% of the total amount of money we're talking about? Where's the rest of it? And so far, what you're telling me about this particular contract doesn't raise any red flags in my head. But then it becomes interesting when they say that, he has confessed to the fact that from part of the contract sums that were paid, that he gave some money to Michael Yadome's son, who remitted it. I'm like, okay, so we're working from answer to question here, right? And I can't help but wonder, all these we've had the Dasuki case that's been on since forever, and we still don't have a conviction there, except for the conviction of the former PDP spokesman, Mr. Metu. Yeah, but the chief principal of the 2 billion hasn't been convicted.
All right, thank you very much. Very quickly, Ikemesit, I'll go to New Telegraph. Empower over 400,000 youth enrolled in social investment programs, according to Minister. Please take us through this story very quickly.
Well, basically, report card. So if you remember, Empower was this social investment initiative of the federal government, which aimed to provide training and jobs for 500,000 young Nigerians across all the 774 local governments of the country. The government is saying it has empowered, and I don't like the way Nigerians use that word, but let's use it because of time, empowered 473,837 Nigerians. So, but the story doesn't make one thing clear. If they get to their target, will the program wind down? Will they get a new cohort of
programs, most of the programs?
Well, again, another word that I don't understand how Nigerians use. What does overhaul mean?
Haul it over.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, we need to go. Well, I'd love to take a few comments, particularly around the blood donation story. Follow the final one, just as I mentioned, climate change.
Yes, I was going to say, climate change is very important. In case we haven't noticed, it's affecting us all. And Kwara is one of the few states that have actually taken this seriously. They've had to close, at least for a month, the forest and forest activities. They're asking people with over 35 hectares to come in for new registration. They're looking at planting new trees because deforestation is real. It's not really checked, especially people with farmlands, because farmers think that wherever they see space, they can just set up their farm and cut down whatever trees are there. And it's very important that we do protect our climate, because as you can see, it's tough out in these streets.
Somebody needs to tell the sun that we are not competing.
All right, so I'll take 2 comments really quickly, because I think it's quite important with regards to the blood donor story. Lab says, as with everything that started with good intentions, the premise for donation of blood by husbands was meant to encourage blood donation and ensure the blood bank remained stocked. So the reason for this was so that in case a woman needed emergency blood, donation by her husband ensured she got blood discounted. They only paid for grouping and cross-matching. I had my son in the general hospital. I was compelled to come with my husband or a male family member. They refused to bleed or test my sister. When I insisted, they checked her PCV and said it was too low for her to donate. Meanwhile, my husband was out of the country. So that's another issue. And finally, Chuma says, thanks Folu for clarifying the blood donation issue. The public hospitals have severe shortages in their blood banks. It doesn't have to be the husbands, because every donor is usually tested and certified before they can donate. So if the man is not fit, he has to provide someone else. But I do agree that the approach can be rejigged.
I do wonder why it has to be a guy, though. Is there something wrong with
Exactly.
Well, they said any member of the family. So perhaps in our own case, because they did test her sister afterwards. But thank you, Folu. At Folu Storms, thank you, Justin Ijeh. At Justin Ijeh, thank you.
The naughty one.
Be safe, people.
All right, Lagos, we need to go. But we're back again for the Grapevine 901. Folu will be staying back for that. And then we'll have, and then we have Chef Jeff 3000 and, of course, Jane Silas. Stay tuned.